My name is Gracie Murphy, and I'm the president and co-founder of Heart of Christ Ministries, based in Huntsville, Alabama, and also in Honduras. Today starts a series of videos in which we're going to talk to you about the journey to justice. Heart of Christ began in 2005 when my husband and I first came to Honduras as missionaries. We didn't really know what it was that we were supposed to do. We just knew that God had called us to be here. The prior year, in 2004, we came to do a 10-day ministry of events in the villages and with the children's home. And as we were beginning to pack up and go home, we began to feel as though we were leaving home, not going home. And when we returned back to the United States, we talked about it and we prayed about it and realized that God was telling us to sell everything and leave everything behind and permanently move to Honduras. The interesting thing about this was that God did not inform us of what it was that He wanted us to do. That made it a little bit difficult as we were telling people and were fundraising when they asked, well, what are you going to do in Honduras? So in the beginning, we told them that we would work in the village of La Ermita and help with the sick and hold church services, those kinds of things that missionaries do, help with food and medicines. Within a couple months of being here, it was June of 2005 that we moved here. In August, during the rains, the local police station collapsed. It was made of adobe and construction that is pretty frequent here in Honduras. And the rains came and the police station, which is just a police post with 2 or 3 guys in it, collapsed, half of it. And we began to feel that we should repair this police station. And when we began to talk to villagers and people about helping us to do this, their response was, oh, don't have anything to do with the police, they're corrupt. And they talked about the history, they talked about the police death squads and things like that. But as we prayed more and more, the Lord told us that our entire ministry in Honduras was going to begin with the construction or the reparations of this police post. It made absolutely no sense, but this is what God told us to do. And so then we moved forward. We bought the supplies. We paid men to repair it. And in August, about a month later, because it was August that it collapsed and we began working, maybe beginning of September 2005, a police colonel showed up at our house. He announced that he was the colonel for all of Francisco Morazan, which was the state that we lived in, and told us that he was aware of our activities. And at the moment, I was pretty scared. I wasn't used to having 12 men with big guns and vests all around me in the yard, and a colonel. Who gets to meet a colonel? There's a colonel standing in my yard. He's telling me that they know about our activities. In my mind, I remember this very clearly. I was sitting there thinking, oh my gosh, is this a good thing or is it a bad thing? But then he began to tell me that his superiors had a desire to strengthen the communication between the police and the community. And he wanted us to act as a bridge between the police and the people. So when we went to deliver food, they would go with us. If we went to deliver medicines, they would go with us. So the people would see the police serving, and the police would learn how to serve. We also began at that time doing English classes for the ranking officials in the police station so that they would have a better ability to communicate with missionaries in the area. And after a few weeks of this, or during this time, the colonel would drop by our house for coffee. At 3 o'clock is coffee hour in Honduras. And sometimes he would come and have dinner with us. And he began to hear about my testimony, in which I was a victim of rape and had become pregnant, and how as a single mother I had suffered domestic violence and some other things throughout my life, and how I had worked as a special needs foster care provider for the state of Massachusetts for almost 9 years, how I'd worked with victims of violence, domestic violence victims and others over the past 30 years. and that I had been involved in investigations as a journalist for freelance correspondent for the Boston Globe and a writer and editor at the Decatur Daily and other organizations that I wrote for, and that I had done some advocacy for children. In the end of September of 2005, the police truck, it's called a patrulla, showed up at our house one day and said that the colonel wanted to meet with me. I went to the police station, and he said that he had been speaking to his superiors and that they had wanted to know if I would write a program for victims of violence. When we talk about special crimes, you could think of the Law and Order SVU unit that you see on television. It's a special unit that attends to victims who are in the vulnerable groups in the crimes that happen against them. So the vulnerable groups basically are women, children, elderly, and the disabled. And in Honduras, the colonel began to tell me that only about 30% of special crimes are ever reported to the police. He said that of those special crimes, only about 12% of them ever make it to the front door of a court to start the judicial process. And then he also informed me that only about 1% of them ever made it to conviction in the court. And that he said that the Minister of Security and his superiors wanted to know if I would write a program to help victims, to attend victims of special crimes. And I sat there and I was like, okay, fine, I'll see what I can do. Over the next 4 months in 2005, I studied the laws in Honduras, studied the legal procedures, the culture, the situation of violence against women and children, studied a couple programs in the United States that were really successful, one in New York, and I forget where the other one was. And then I also thought about, as a victim who has suffered various forms of violence, what worked, what didn't work, what was missing in the programs that I had encountered. And then I also thought, as a person who had helped victims of violence, the very same things. What worked, what didn't work, what was missing, and then began the process of formulating a program. And in January of 2006, I finished the program and took it, all written in Spanish. It was amazing how the Lord worked Spanish for me and made me fluent in it. It was basically a supernatural thing. In addition to studying and being immersed in the culture, God did a little extra supernaturally to help me be fluent in the language. But in January of 2006, I went to the police station, which is the capital central headquarters for the state of Francisco Morazan outside of Tegucigalpa, and told him that I'd completed the project. And what was interesting is, as I sat there, he took the documents from me, and then he put them over on the side of his desk. And I was thinking, man, I just spent 4 months working on this, and he's not even going to read it. And I looked at him and I said, aren't you even going to read it or look at it? And this is what he says to me. Now, I want you to remember, I'm an American missionary. We arrived here in June, and this is January. It's only about 7 months later. I'm sitting in the office of a police colonel in a third world country. And he doesn't ask me. He says, yes, I'll read it. But the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take you downstairs and show you the office that we are building for you. You are now Chief of Special Crimes, and there will be 2 police officers assigned to your office. And I'm listening to him say this, and I'm not really understanding what's going on. I say, what are you talking about? And he says, let me say it again. You are now Chief of Special Crimes. We have an office we're building for you. You have 2 police officers assigned to you. And I'm still not getting it. And I say, what are you talking about? So then he says, let me write it down for you. And he gets a piece of paper and he writes down, you are now Chief de la Oficina Integral de Atención Delito Especiales. That means Chief of the Special Office, Integral Office of Crimes Against Victims of Violence. And all I could think was, he didn't ask. He said, it was a fact. It was a done deal. We did not go to the government to begin this work in justice. They came to us. That was God. And God didn't tell us what it is that we would be doing while we were in Honduras before we came. I believe it's because we would have thought it was too big and too scary. And in our next conversation, I'll explain exactly what it is that we did, how it got moving, what happened with it, and why God didn't tell us in the beginning.